So last month, I was not feeling too hot about my little sketchbook hoarding problem. So I took it upon myself to pick the thickest sketchbook I had on hand and then speedrun filling it out completely by drawing in all of these pages by the end of the year. Now historically, October has always been an incredibly busy month for me in terms of everything that could happen in one's personal life. Q4 has started in most corporate jobs, so the work hours stretched a lot. Many celebrations and birthday parties happen to land in October, and then sprinkle in a couple of friends hangouts here and there, which is a great reason to be busy. I'm not really complaining, but with a sketchbook challenge and janky YouTube videos to make, it has become very painfully obvious that my time management is just not my strongest suit. With that said, because my time and energy were preoccupied with non-sketchbook related items, I just had to clock it in and fill out these pages somehow. Now, it does not require a perfect set of eyeballs to see that my pages set for the month of October is a bit chunkier than the previous month. As a refresher, I had eyeballed the approximate amount of pages I had to complete each month in order to be on track to finishing this by the end of December. I'm cooked, by the way. Anyways, since I was getting my ass kicked daily, I only had so much energy left to sit down and do my sketches. So that meant that this month I was just purely focused on studies, copying stuff on Pinterest, taking photos in my real life, and then trying to recreate it with pen and ink, etc. The way I view Sketchbook, I see them as a space for first ideas and learning. Transparently, I'm still trying to build my own confidence in drawing, and I feel like I need to clock in many more miles under the pen before I'm able to draw without clutching on references. So my sketchbook pages honestly aren't pretty at all, so do not expect to be wowed by any of the many sketch studies from Instagram, some initial ideas from YouTube thumbnails of previous videos, and even some illegible doodles I don't even understand myself. None of my pages are polished and meant to be seen by anyone, except for you guys, of course, because this is a sketchbook video. However, I do admire the beautiful sketchbooks I see all over social medias with pages full of paintings, colored pencils, and even acrylic marker doodles. In another universe, I wish I was already at the point of my art journey where I could just whip out art supplies and every page could be a masterpiece or portfolio worthy. And I do romanticize that quite a bit. However, I have also accepted that it is not my reality at all. But whether or not a sketchbook is messy and chaotic like mine, or a masterpiece on every other page flip, I am a firm believer that any artist that devotes a good amount of time honing their skills, laying out ideas, or making full-blown illustrations in their sketchbooks will have all of that effort pay off. So I do personally hope that at the end of the month, or maybe even the end of the year, I will be able to draw figures, anatomy, and facial expressions much more confidently. The issue I was facing in a lot of my work was spending way too much time laying down lines or redrawing brushstrokes. My lines wouldn't always go where I wanted to go, and in turn I would have no confidence in my line work whatsoever, which would lead to a sketch layer like this. And then I would end up redrawing the same thing 50 times over and over. This isn't to say I want the perfect line art on the first try, but when I'm working on, let's say, a Webtoon episode when there needs to be 60 or 70 panels to draw, I don't really have the luxury of time that allows me to do sloppy line art and then take 10 tries to line art one panel. I also wanted to be far more familiar with anime or cartoon style anatomy, so for my specific purposes I wouldn't need to heavily rely on reference photos or 3D models that Clip Studio Paint has to offer, which by the way is my main Webtoon drawing program. Anyways, as you can see, I'm filling up page after page full of studies. There were a couple of days where I barely had any willpower to finish a single page, so I had just plopped down a drawing or two before going off to bed. Even doing one study can unfortunately be all I can do some of the night. But if there was anything I had learned from doing sketchbook pages this month, it would be that some days you just gotta clock it in. Art has always been so personal to me, even as a hobbyist. Before, every piece I've drawn was treated so preciously, but a lot of common advice I would hear from professional artists is to detach yourself from your work. And I mean, in their case, they're probably referring to creating work for their art directors or clients, but another scenario where it could apply to me is when creating piles and piles of drawings. Like a teacher assigning you to draw 1,000 gesture drawings, for example. You don't really have the time or luxury to treat every single gesture like a masterpiece. If the assignment is due next week, you just gotta be speedy, efficient, and just create a habit of drawing a lot. The quantity is the goal, so not so much the quality. And that is exactly what I'm working towards here. Building that habit of showing up even when I'm exhausted or don't feel like drawing at all. So with the massive amount of pages due at the end of the month, I just knew I had to fill out these pages somehow. Admittedly, halfway through the month, I had so many thoughts of feeling like this was all pointless. I didn't really feel my art or line work was improving as I kept filling out page after page with studies. But when I was working on the Inktober drawings in the later half of the month, I think my eyeballing skills improved. For context, my Inktober prompt was recreating manga double spreads from pre-existing stories. So I was still working from a reference photos, but instead of a quick sketch where I could just draw with a pen and move on, I was intentionally observing and carefully putting down the sketch line. Now, the improvement wasn't a huge jump in skill, but I did feel that my line confidence was better. It's a little hard to explain, but I was able to sketch into characters without redoing and erasing multiple times. And then I didn't have that much anxiety when laying down the marks on the paper. So I felt my hands was actually going to where I needed it to go. So even after drawing tons of doodles, I think I consider this a small win. Improvement isn't always seen in your sketches or drawing, but sometimes improvement can be seen in just your process as well. So at this point, we are almost at the end of the month, and there is still quite a sizable amount of pages to fill out in here. I knew I was due for a cafe drawing session, so I'll probably head over to a coffee shop, maybe have a snack, and just draw. Okay, yeah, coffee sounds really good right now. And we reached the end of October. Now, as you can see, I did manage to fill out the pages somehow. Honestly, there were a lot of nights where I only drew one page, and it happened way more often than I'd like, but October was just such a doozy. I remember I would finish editing and upload an Inktober video, and then I would spend the following day just playing catch up by trying to crank out as many sketchbook pages as possible. But then once I started creating the next video, I'd had to go back to sneaking in a sketchbook page or two in between filming and my work. Especially on days when I was filming my process for Inktober, a lot of my mental and drawing energy was poured into that video, so by the time I turned off the camera and needed to get back to my sketchbook, I just honestly wanted to head straight to bed. But somehow, we pulled through, guys. Needless to say, with all of the challenges with the limited time in mind, the studies and sketches were a lot more messier, and then I tend to gravitate towards exclusively doing facial expressions, hands, or drawing anatomy. But like I had mentioned before, I had to keep going if I wanted to get into a good spot in the sketchbook. I know by the time this video is released, we are going to be partway through November, but we do have another sketchbook check-in coming up. I do have another chunk of pages that need to be done for the month of November. So hopefully I will see you guys in the next sketchbook video. So keep drawing, and I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye!